Orkz, the angry green menace. These hulking, violent alien brutes spread across the galaxy like a moldy cancer, reproducing by fungoid spores that create entire self-sustaining ecosystems, allowing them to spread rapidly on any planet capable of sustaining life. Indeed, orcs are so adept at spreading and reproducing that they come perilously close to challenging holy humanity's dominance of the galaxy through sheer numbers. Orcs are a crude, animalistic race, but do not be lulled into a false sense of security by their apparent lack of intelligence. In addition to being able to tear a man in half with their bare hands, orcs possess an instinctual grasp of basic technology and have been able to build crude replicas of human firearms. Orcs kill and destroy, not in pursuit of any lofty ideology, but for their own instinctual, sick and twisted amusement. Make no mistake, the green-skinned Xenos is a very real threat to you and your family. For this reason, it is mandatory that you report anything you even suspect may be an orcoid life form to your local planetary defense force, who will deal with the problem swiftly and with extreme prejudice. And a stern reminder that failure to report any suspected Xenos activity is a capital crime. We now return you to your regularly broadcast Imperium-approved drama, Love and a Lasgun.
We've got the perfect weapon. We've got the perfect weapon.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to 40K Armoury, where we look at the weapons in Warhammer 40,000 through the lens of real science and history. That was one of the more accurate pieces of anti-orc propaganda you might hear if you lived in the 41st millennium. Yes, I'm covering an alien gun for the first time, and we're starting with something that should be fairly simple: Ork Shootas and sluggas. Unlike the main weapons of many other races, there's no physics-defying fictional technology at play here. Ork guns are basically just regular guns. They fire solid slug bullets using some kind of smokeless powder, very much like real human guns do. However, they do have some features that make them very unusual by real-life firearm standards. First of all, Shootas and sluggas are all handmade. According to the lore, they're handmade by orc mechs, which are the orc version of engineers. And you can kind of tell this just by looking at them on both the models and in the art. The lasguns and bolters have factory-produced standard models. There are different versions of these human-made guns depending on where and when they were made, but identical versions are cranked out in the billions. Every gun in a squad, and generally across an entire army, looks exactly the same. Ork guns, in contrast, have much more irregular designs. They could have a cylindrical barrel shroud or a rectangular one, holes in the shroud to better disperse the heat, strips of cloth wrapped around the stock, either for a more comfortable grip or for holding the gun together, drum magazines or box magazines, and all of these variations could be present in the same squad of 1 or 2 dozen boys. Because the guns are handmade, there's going to be a lot more variety, whether it's something the mech genuinely thinks will make the gun better, or just adapting to get the most out of whatever resources are on hand. Handmade submachine guns and semi-automatic pistols are a thing that exists in real life, most famously the Ludi submachine gun. A very simple submachine gun designed to be manufactured in someone's garage using basic metalworking tools by British underground gun designer P.A. Ludi to protest British gun control laws. Since he released these designs, guns like this have been made all around the world by both hobbyists and organized criminals, and they can vary a lot in design and quality. So if there's a real gun that you wanted to compare the Shoota to, the handmade Ludi submachine gun might be a good place to start. A basic design that has a lot of little differences in things like ammo capacity and rate of fire from gun to gun based on the non-standardized way they're built. But there's another big difference between a Shoota or slugga and the average modern firearm, and that's caliber, the size of the bullets they fire.
If you know your lore, or just look at artwork featuring orcs and humans together for scale, you probably know where this is going. Beyond just looking at these hulking green monstrosities, the rules on the tabletop give us a pretty decent rough baseline for where an Ork Shoota or slugga fits into the firearm hierarchy. For a long time, across numerous editions, a Shoota occupied a tier directly between the las gun and the bolter. Same range, same firing rate as both guns. It had a strength of 4 like a bolter, but lacked the bolter's 5+ armor penetration capacity. Recently, as part of the massive rules change and rebalancing of 8th edition, the Shoota and bolter are pretty much on par with each other. But that's part of a general simplification of the rules that happened across that edition. So I think it's safe to say a Shoota's damage output lies somewhere between a standard modern firearm, which a las gun is comparable to, maybe slightly better, and a gun that fires 75 caliber rocket-propelled ammunition that explodes on impact. Also, the Shoota is probably quite a bit closer to that 75 caliber rocket-propelled exploding behemoth than to a modern assault rifle. And it's just an ordinary bullet. So we're probably looking at a very large metal slug propelled by an extremely potently packed powder charge. Say that 3 times fast. We're definitely not looking at a bullet the size of something you'd use in your standard battle rifle or hunting rifle, and certainly not pistol caliber. No, on the conservative end, we're looking at something that would be used in an elephant gun, or an anti-tank rifle, or a heavy machine gun. A bullet like the 600 Nitro Express, or the Browning 50 caliber heavy machine gun round. These are fairly conservative approximates of what an Ork caliber small arm round would look like. But could a submachine gun or pistol even handle a bullet this size? Actually, yes. In fact, I have footage of a single shot pistol designed to fire Browning 50 caliber heavy machine gun rounds. Let's take a look.
Close it all the way. Okay. Don't cock it.
So that fellow just said he forgot to put in his earplugs, and someone in the comments section said he probably has permanent hearing loss. When you're dealing with any gun firing rounds this huge, it has to have a way to handle the truly enormous amount of recoil that the powder charge produces. Otherwise, the gun will beat itself to pieces in no time at all, probably in a way that's dangerous and potentially fatal to the user. As you can see, this pistol's chamber, slide, and recoil system are very complex and large to disperse that energy from such a huge, powerful bullet. And this gun is only single shot. Ork sluggas have a detachable magazine or occasionally come in revolver form, so having a loading mechanism and combining the immense recoil with a more rapid rate of fire causes even more concerns. And then there's the Shootas, which have full auto, which makes them still less controllable and more dangerous. So how to deal with the recoil from these absurdly massive bullets? Well, it certainly isn't out of the question that the mech could build some overly complicated Rube Goldberg recoil system. They probably would save that for guns being made for important leaders, like the War Boss. The average Shoota that these guys crank out in the thousands or even millions is probably not put together with that level of patience and care. And once again, the tabletop rules support this. Ork War Bosses fire custom Shootas, which have a different profile and more shots. As for the humbler common Shoota of the average boy, there's actually a simple, crude, but effective way to deal with a larger amount of recoil, which seems like a pretty orky solution to me. It's a technique I like to call the high point method. This is a high point 9mm pistol. It's not exactly the most respected gun in the world. The company High Point wanted to make pistols as cheap as possible while still being reliable. Their market was low-income people, and because those people would probably want a gun for self-defense, the gun was supposed to be in 9mm or 45 ACP, the most popular self-defense round for most gun owners, since anything weaker is considered not effective enough. High Point designed a polymer pistol with a straight blowback fixed barrel recoil system. This is the simplest system a semi-auto or full auto gun can use, and therefore the cheapest. When the primer is detonated and the bullet is fired, the casing and slide get launched backwards by the explosion into the chamber onto a single spring, pushing the slide forward again after it's gone all the way back and ejecting the now empty casing from the bullet. While returning to its original position, another round is picked up and chambered from the magazine, which another spring at the bottom of the magazine helps push into place while pushing another bullet up to replace it if the magazine still has ammo in it. By using this system instead of more complicated ones, High Point was able to significantly reduce the price on their handguns. But this also caused a problem. A straight blowback system has nothing to soften the recoil produced by larger bullets. Too much force from the recoil on top of just making the gun uncomfortable to shoot could also cause loading malfunctions or even cause the gun to blow apart in very dangerous ways while firing due to the slide snapping back so violently. For this reason, most guns prior to the High Point either used more complex blowback systems that soften the recoil, or a smaller bullet, with 380 ACP or 9x18 Makarov being the absolute upper limit that was considered safe for a simple straight blowback system. High Point, however, came up with another solution. Just make the slide heavier. More weight being pushed back requires more force to move due to inertia, which softens the recoil naturally. And if you compare the High Point to a more conventional 9mm like my C100 here, you can see that it's a very thick boy. It's especially apparent when you look at the guns from the front. Don't worry, there's no one behind the camera, the guns are unloaded and the safety is on. Don't ever do this without taking multiple precautions, people. But if you look at the front of the guns, you can see just how much thicker the High Point slide is than the C100s. That's the High Point method, and it works. The High Point has been a very popular pistol due to its low cost and is proven to be completely safe and mostly reliable. It's bulky, top-heavy, not particularly nice looking, but it goes bang. Of course, a handgun that fires a Browning 50 cal heavy machine gun round is a whole different level from one that fires a 9mm pistol, and a submachine gun firing a round like that in full auto is even more insane. Could a gun like that exist in real life? In fact, let's take every single possible feature of an Ork Shooter that we've talked about so far and throw them together. A handmade submachine gun with a straight blowback system. Oh hey, that's the Ludi submachine gun we already talked about. But surely no one has made a Ludi submachine gun in a massive round like the Browning 50 caliber, right? No matter how much weight you add to the slide, safety concerns alone are going to scare off any responsible gun maker, and on top of that, you're going to have legal issues in pretty much every country on Earth. But drug cartels aren't exactly known for their responsibility or respect for the law, are they? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have a gun that fits all of those criteria. A handmade, straight blowback submachine gun based on P.A. Ludi's design, made to fire 50 caliber heavy machine gun rounds. Now, bit of a disclaimer here. The explanation for this gun I'm using is from a YouTube comment on Burst Review's Cobra Terminator shotgun video. I haven't heard any solid confirmation that everything this guy says is accurate, but what he says does seem to match with the photographic evidence that he's talking about. So let's take a look at this thing, shall we? Wow! It looks exactly like an Ork Shooter. Exactly. Hang a tooth from it, and you're there. Those people standing behind it are presumably government officials, and the bullets surrounding it do indeed look like 50 caliber Browning machine gun rounds, and it also looks like they would fit in its homemade magazine. This gun is actually a lot more spot on for a working replica of an Ork Shooter than the Gyrojet is for the bolter. This is how one would look, this is how one would function, and let me tell ya, I would not want to be on either end of this gun when it's fired. This thing has to weigh at least, what, 60 pounds? 80 pounds? And firing it? Imagine a bull rider at a rodeo, but instead of the bucking bull, it's this giant bucking submachine gun. I'm pretty sure this is meant to be fired by at least 2 people. One holding the handle and another in front aiming the barrel, probably while it's propped against something. Of course, if you were a giant green hairless gorilla, it would be much more easy to manage on your own. Sadly, I don't have any footage of this gun or one like it firing. It was probably impounded and destroyed by the government officials who confiscated it from the cartel. So we'll just have to imagine what it would have looked like. It certainly would have been loud, very destructive, and borderline impossible to control. That about sums it up, but there's one other thing I have to address before I end the video, because otherwise everyone in the comments section is going to be bugging me about it. That is Ork Mob Space Magic, or as it's more properly known in canon, the power of the WAAAGH! Orks are all slightly psychic in 40k, but aside from weird boys, none of them are powerful enough to do anything alone. However, when a ton of them get together, they start to affect things around them unconsciously. Ork vehicles with red paint jobs actually go faster because orks believe they go faster. This is all canon. And again, the rules back it up. You can get a red paint job on an ork vehicle and it gets a speed boost. Also, the power of the WAAAGH makes orks less likely to run away. Those are pretty much the only two things, but they are in-game rules. But fans really like to exaggerate the power of the WAAAGH a lot. There are people who seriously insist that the orks basically have complete control of reality and that they make anything they imagine real due to this collective psychic power. Well, if it really worked like that, the orks would be pretty much invincible because orks always believe they're the best and the strongest. They should never lose a battle. What the lore actually says is a lot more subtle. The big sources people seem to be getting this from are the 3rd and 4th editions of the Ork Codex, which quotes a tech priest named Lucas Anzion, and a now out-of-print sourcebook called Xenology. Anzion does a bunch of studies on alien races, including the orks. There's a little segment where he looks at Ork Shootas and says they have a bunch of little mechanical problems. A trigger won't be hooked up properly, a firing pin that's too short to pierce the primer. Because of all this stuff, Anzion comes to the conclusion that ork guns work because of their collective psychic ability. Ork Mob Space Magic. A few things about this. First, people really took this and ran with it, exaggerating it. To the point where there are people who say that ork guns aren't really guns at all. They're just a bunch of scrap metal thrown together in the shape of a gun, and they work purely because of ork psychic brain juice. This directly contradicts what is actually described in the lore. Mechanical systems that you would expect to find in a functioning gun are named in the book as being part of Shootas. They just had some minor manufacturing problems that would prevent them from working correctly. Our source for this is Lucas Anzion, a member of the Adeptus Mechanicus, a group whose solution to a computer error is to lather the computer in oil and start praying. They have mysticized technology so much that it's a handicap to their ability to understand it, especially unfamiliar technology like something an alien would use. It's very possible that these guns were either damaged when they were captured for Anzion to study, or he just doesn't actually understand how they're mechanically supposed to function. Regardless of how you interpret Xenology, ork guns are not depicted as being random bits of garbage that outwardly resemble a gun and are run purely on ork hopes and dreams. They're guns. They have firing pins and slides, recoil springs, and usually triggers. That's how they're described in the fluff. If Ork Mob Space Magic comes into play at all, it's just to smooth over any manufacturing errors caused by sloppy construction. There are plenty of stories where orks operate in small groups and their guns still function, which according to the rules of ork psychic ability, wouldn't make sense unless ork guns were mechanically functional guns. So don't bombard the comments section saying that my theories about the mechanics of Ork Shootas and sluggas are wrong because they're just random hunks of crap. What I've said here is completely in line with 40k canon. Ork guns are guns. Now that that's out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember, Imperium citizens, our enemies are all around us. Be brave, be vigilant, behave. And feel free to leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe too. Have a great day.